Woo, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star here. Baby, we're going to talk some Star Wars. And I love doing this every month, not only because I love me some Star Wars, and I do, no matter what the hell's going on in the news, and we're sure as hell going to talk about a lot about it, but because I get to hang out with one of my best friends in the world, that being Rob. Robin, welcome to the show, man.
Snuggle bomb, oogie woogie.
Hell yes, man. So, Robin, we've got a hell of a start. I mean, things have been nuts since Solo came out, since Solo Star Wars Story came out, which that we're going to be opening up talking about that. But you know, I'm gonna open up with this. I want to ask you this quick. I mean, how are you feeling this month, Star Wars wise? Picture this like going into a hospital, like triage, right? You know, and they're saying, okay, you know, your face, tell us the number of how you're feeling, or they have you point at the face of like, is it a full grimace? Are you like writhing in pain? You know, is it 1 to 10? Like 10 being the worst pain possible over Star Wars, 1 being you're happy as hell. Where do you put yourself right now?
Well, in terms of the franchise itself, I mean, you know, like I'm 2, you know, it's not that big of a deal. Like you're talking about walking into the emergency room though, and it seems like everybody else is running around, you know, like you know, the people are coming in with scrapes and bruises and claiming that they're dying.
Yeah, right. Yeah, everybody seems like they're at a 10 right now.
Yeah,
like, I mean that's the way that it feels on the internet. I agree.
Right. And that is infectious to a certain degree. And like, you know, if we were going to talk about my feelings about the Star Wars fandom right now, then I'd say maybe a 5 or 6. But so far as the franchise itself, I'm fine. Doesn't bother me.
Sure, that's a great delineation to make, or differentiation to make there between the fandom and the actual franchise itself.
Yeah, because it really kind of has become its own entity. I mean, it always has, but it's I don't think we've seen this much divergence, you know, between, you know, the franchise and the fandom.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the prequels have nothing on this. And it's not just because social media. Yeah, it's not just because social media didn't exist at the time either.
Right.
This is a wholly different animal. In fact, you know, first off, I'll say I'm probably in the same numbers with you, where with the franchise, I'm feeling pretty good. You know, some of the comic books I'm feeling are a little weak, and they need to shape that up. And the books are feeling a little soft, even though I know Thrawn's going to fix that. Yeah, just like it's fixing the comics in a very real way.
Yeah, did you see that new cover they put out for the limited edition for the San Diego Comic-Con?
Was that the one with Anakin in it?
Yeah, that was
awesome.
A sweet piece of art.
Hell yes, it was. That was really, really cool, and I'm hoping that story's going to come out.
Yeah,
because it's a pretty good bet. You know, there's no spoiler here. I don't know this. I'm just guessing that this is going to tell, because in the first Thrawn book you heard rumors of Thrawn knew Anakin Skywalker. I think he's going to figure out, just like Tarkin did in the Tarkin book. I think Thrawn's going to figure out that Vader is Anakin.
Well, I mean, the kind of synopsis they've given for this book is going to be a Thrawn Darth Vader sort of buddy cop movie.
Yeah,
you know, and you know, of course, if they have history, that's going to come up.
Yeah,
I mean, and the fact that they put that cover out, I mean, that's just a glaring, you know, tell.
Yeah, no, I agree. But because that book's coming out, and among other things, of course, we have the new cartoon series or animated series that we mentioned in last month's Star Wars update. A lot of these things, I'm with you. I think the franchise is largely doing fine.
Just a note, congrats to Dave Filoni, who won a Saturn Award for Rebels.
Yeah,
this week.
Yeah, fantastic, and in my opinion, well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been waiting. I'm excited. I know July 31st, I think they said, is when season 4 of Rebels will be coming out on Blu-ray.
Right.
I've been waiting for like a complete box set of that to come out before I purchase it. But I will be definitely doing so on Blu-ray in the near future. So, and as far as fandom goes, I'm with you, 5 or 6. I mean, something we didn't line up actually for this month was the Kelly Marie Tran story, which I talked about on Sovryn Tech Prime a little bit. Just because I think that, I mean, it's so tough to tell what's real on the internet.
Right. I mean, it's like, it's FUD.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like And then, this gets into something we're probably going to talk about later, the same thing that happened to Kathleen Kennedy about like a lot of the hate that got put on her birthday post and all this stuff.
Right.
We can get into all that a little bit later, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fandom does feel just really fucking ugly right now. And I just don't get it because, well, again, I mean, I don't know. I wonder
but I think this is something that you brought up when you talked about the Kelly Marie Tran thing. I to a certain degree, I do think this is like a lot of the really negative stuff is coming from a minority of people that are puffing themselves up to look like they have greater numbers than they really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going on.
And I do follow a few people on social media who, just for fandom purposes, that are really kind of pushing back against this kind of stuff and are trying to, put out a more positive attitude. And so, there's definitely a divide there. But I do think for the most part that the people that feel like you and I do outweigh the people that are, kind of making a big stake about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Well, I don't know. There's a whole lot that could be said about all of that, but yeah, it's tough to know what's really real on the internet. Bottom line,
right?
And that, I guess really the numbers are what will speak for themselves. But the numbers don't exactly tell, by Star Wars standards, the prettiest story. And I think we'll go ahead and start. We'll open up with what we wanted to talk about first, which is the box office performance. I mean, it's been about a month now, it's actually been, I think, exactly a month. Box office performance of Solo: A Star Wars Story. This is the latest entry, of course, put into theaters of Star Wars. And right now it is sitting at a domestic total, and that is in the US, $204 million as far as what it's grossed. And then for worldwide total, worldwide foreign markets, it's done 151 million about. So with a grand total of 356 million, that is not going to, cut muster for the most expensive Star Wars movie ever made. Granted, it's expensive because were extensive reshoots, but these numbers are honestly great for any movie. But for Star Wars, of course, like everybody's saying, I mean, it's not good. What do you think, Robin?
Well, I mean, for one, do we have any exact numbers on how much Solo cost? Because I've heard different stories on that, and it seems like there's some certain uncertainty as to, and I don't think they've actually put out the exact numbers.
Yeah, that's
especially when it comes to like how much they spent on marketing and things like that, because that's always a big thing. And honestly, I mean, I think that had a lot to do with the poor performance of the movie, was the marketing.
Yeah. So the argument goes is that, or the theory is from Variety, is that because they don't have exact numbers, but it cost at least $250 million to make. And then there was $150 million in promotion.
So it broke even. Just barely.
It just broke even, but that doesn't work.
No,
for Hollywood, right?
Yeah. But I mean, and I think they've mentioned and we'll get into this, but they're going to be changing their marketing strategy in the future.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, so do these numbers kind of surprise me? Not exactly, considering and I think we talked about this last month. I mean, it was dumb of them to not stick with December. They really should have stuck with December.
Yeah. It was definitely, it was, overload.
Yeah. I mean, it's too hot a field.
And
this is something,
especially with the other two big
Avengers.
Avengers and Deadpool. No way, man. That was bad move.
Yeah, and now this past week they've been taking on the Jurassic World sequel.
Right.
I mean, and that's and of course that I personally feel that's squarely aimed at taking on Disney. So
yeah, well, I mean, Colin Trevorrow had fired shots on that matter earlier.
Right.
He made some statements about how, like the new Jurassic Park movies are for a new generation, but not at the expense of the old movies.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's largely delivered on that. I'm going to have a review of Jurassic World coming up on Sovryn Tech in the future. But in any case, yeah. So first off, like, I think making this a May movie was just pure foolishness. That money, that 150 million in marketing, was not money well spent, because I mean, they botched that too. Whether it was in May or December, they botched that up. That being Disney, of course.
Well, they started way too late too.
Exactly. Right.
Like, I mean, I remember both of us were kind of feeling not too excited for this movie before the trailers had hit, before actually that second trailer, because even the first trailer, the teaser trailer, wasn't that great.
No, it wasn't.
And we only started getting really kind of more enthusiastic for a movie after that second trailer.
Yeah, which came mid-April.
Right. Which is like, that's really late in the game. Yeah.
Which sucks, and the reason you want to do it earlier, okay, is because you want to start building up that groundswell and have people watch the trailer over and over again and have people talking about it. Like, oh, I'm so excited for this fucking film. As to where, I remember talking to people when I was at Liberty Forum and everything. And, I mean, people know I'm a Star Wars nut. And I was just saying, I was like, yeah, this is the first time I've just haven't felt excited for anything. So I'm sure my word of mouth, and I can imagine other, Star Wars sweaties word of mouth just being like, yeah.
Well, the general attitude seemed to be from the beginning, even before we'd seen anything in the movie, was just announced that they were going to be doing a solo Han Solo story movie. It was an unnecessary movie.
Yeah.
A lot of people
I
said,
agree.
I mean, like, it's fine that they're doing this, but we don't really. It's not needed. There's definitely other movies we'd rather see before that.
Yeah, like the Obi-Wan film.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but. Now, I mean, that said, like, this had nothing to do. I'm a little annoyed by people saying this really has to do with The Last Jedi. I don't know how I feel about that, because I didn't, at the time especially, I didn't have so much of a problem with The Last Jedi. That wasn't keeping me from getting excited about Solo.
Right.
I mean, they were completely separate entities in my mind, but I was still down talking Solo just on its own marketing merits.
Well, I mean. I agree with you, but I mean, there was that narrative out there.
Sure.
And whether or not you want to give it credence or not, certainly some people, who knows how many, believe that it was back. I mean, we both know people that said that they're not going to watch Solo because of their reaction to The Last Jedi. So,
yeah. I mean, there's patrons of Sovryn Tech that they've come right out and said, I'm not watching new Star Wars anymore. And
right. I mean, that's their prerogative, but whether or not that represents the whole fandom, I don't know, and whether or not that had an actual tangible impact on the box office results. I don't know. It's really hard to kind of judge that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's a lot of factors. Like we said, there was Avengers and Deadpool 2. Yeah. I mean, you've got a lot of pieces on this chessboard that could have led to why this was a concern.
Yeah. And I think that I can understand, if somebody up top, made the decision that they were going to release this movie in May. And so from that standpoint, I can understand why they went with the strategy of holding back on those trailers until almost the last minute, because if they came out with trailers a couple or a few months after The Last Jedi, I think the feelings of burnout would probably be even stronger. It's kind of like, oh man, more Star Wars already.
Yeah. What's funny, I mean, and this is kind of worth talking about. I know there have been a couple of journalistic sources, if you can even call them that, but I mean, I got their point. It was fair. A lot of people are just starting to say that, look, this whole Marvel thing is just a one-off. This ability to create a cinematic universe, like lightning just won't strike twice. Like, they tried and it's not working. And I say that because Ant-Man and Wasp, is getting like really, really great reviews, and people are really excited for it. And that's just coming very hot off of the heels, hotter off the heels than Last Jedi and Solo,
right?
Of the the latest Avengers film,
right?
So, but it you're not hearing any of these problems. I mean, like the narrative, around Ant-Man and Wasp is wholly different. I mean, in fact, it's the exact opposite.
I mean, I'm looking forward to, because I liked the first Ant-Man movie. I thought that was actually one of the few Marvel movies that I've liked. I mean, in general, I am feeling a little bit burnt out. I watched Infinity War, and honestly, I was kind of bored through most of it.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand, and I agree with you about Ant-Man. I thought that was one of the better ones, along with Doctor Strange,
Right.
that have come out in recent memory.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I get the point that, yeah, maybe this can't exactly be pulled off, or I don't know.
I mean, I don't know that it's impossible. Okay, so I would like, yeah, I could apply those rules to every other franchise in existence except Star Wars. Because I mean, Star Wars is really its own, and Star Trek too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like I think it's entirely possible for them to turn this thing around and really, kind of present a cohesive, consistent universe that people enjoy regularly.
Sure.
It's just that they're flubbing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I don't mind if, I mean, the narrative in the news and everything, and by a lot of other Star Wars commentary shows, we'll say, I don't know that I agree with them, but the idea that, or one of the concepts is that, well, now Disney is concentrating on episode 9 really, really hard. I'm fine if that's all that they're going to do for a little while, and they hold off. We'll talk about this in a little bit. If they hold off on doing anything else, and much announcement of anything else other than maybe the Obi-Wan movie, that's the thing that could really save this.
I mean, they had to concentrate on episode 9 anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what. I mean, just regardless of whether any of those other movies were going to happen or not.
Right.
Personally, I think it was, they could have put that, and we're going to talk about this too, I know too, but personally, I think they could have been in talks about having this new Rian Johnson trilogy, but announcing it, I thought that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
I think they should have kept that under wraps for a good while longer.
Yeah, especially to talk about it, before Last Jedi even hit. Like,
that was a mistake. That was like I said, and I'm not saying, and when I say they're flubbing it with Star Wars, I'm not talking about necessarily just the storytelling. I'm talking about all these little missteps with the marketing and the planning and their strategy. I mean, that's really where all the mistakes are being made.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about, because we're going to get into all those subjects in just a little bit here. Something that I found interesting. In fact, this is, I think this says so much about Solo. Like, I mean, I make it a point, and I've made it a point since I was a schoolboy, as Captain Picard would say, which, by the way, baby, that picture of Mark Hamill and Patrick Stewart.
Wasn't that hot?
Holy shit, man. I mean, that's like, that is so much greatness. I don't know how the camera could even take that picture.
Right. That was my description. It's just a supernova of awesome.
Oh, man. The best. I mean, that was incredible to see that.
Literally when stars collide.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And all the more exciting, that especially since, I'll talk about this in July's Star Trek update, but a lot of news about Patrick Stewart coming back to Star Trek.
I'm really excited about that. I really am.
Yeah. So anyway, but this is something that speaks to the point around Solo in general, which is, so like I said, I read every Star Wars book, and I don't mind if not everybody's that way, and I get that. I mean, back in the old EU, we're going to talk about that later. I've read it all, and sometimes it was torturous, sometimes it was joy, and a lot of times it was just somewhere in between. But anyway, especially with the new canon, I've been trying to keep up quite a bit.
Yeah,
and for as somebody who is such a canon junkie like I am, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, is there going to be a novelization of Solo? like it didn't even cross my mind that they're supposed to be one of these books. I mean, because there was one for Rogue One. There's been one for every movie so far, obviously.
Well, here again, it's like the unnecessary novelization of the unnecessary movie.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think it just points at the problems with this film. Like, I mean, it literally didn't cross my fucking mind, like that there'd be a novelization. I already bought I had pre-ordered months ahead of time the visual guide, the art book, and all that, and I just never even thought about the novelization. And just the other day, literally a couple days ago, and I don't know when it finally came across the bow or what, But just the other day in my Audible app, it shows up. It says, "Oh, solo Star Wars story," and I mean, it must have been pretty fresh because they don't even have like a finalized cover for it or anything or much information on it at all.
Well, this seems to be their new strategy with Star Wars books. I mean, the novelization is that they're doing this post movie release, a couple months after the movie come out. And you got to wonder if it's like, okay, are they doing this to tweak the movie?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because here's the thing, and I talked about this a couple months back on the Star Wars update.
Right.
Like the novelization, which they specifically called The Last Jedi Expanded Edition. Like
right.
They specifically called it that. I thought that was one of the best Star Wars books ever written. Like the movie can go shit itself. I mean, not exactly, but it doesn't blow up my skirt as to where the novelization I thought was fucking awesome. And so I kind of wonder, like, are they listening to like fan reaction to the film and then they're going to decide what they're going to pop into this book? This is a very, very weird strategy. This would be considered anathema before Star Wars ever pulled this off with The Last Jedi. I mean, because the idea of that you could make money off of a book while the movie's not in theaters would be just considered. I mean, that's crazy talking.
Right. Well, and I don't think they would have been able to do this in the past either because, you remember nerddom back in the 90s, as retcons was like a huge thing for a while.
Sure.
And so like doing any kind of like editing, especially after the special editions where they went and changed those movies, people were very resistant to any kind of like, post-release, futzing with the stories. Yeah. And so, but now they're doing this and it seems to be working for them. And it's just weird how that, his dynamic is totally changed from the way it was in the past.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if I want to get into this, but well, just to say quick. So the solo novelization, the unnecessary novelization is coming out September 4th, 2018. I already have my copy pre-ordered. But I will read it and we'll see. I have no idea if it's an expanded edition or not.
Yeah.
I kind of hope it is.
I'll fully admit here. I mean, I'm more of a Star Wars novel snob.
Sure.
I'll turn my nose up at some of them.
Yeah, no, I'm a total slut. I have no problem saying that. Like, I bend over and take it all. So, anyway, that's been my MO forever.
So, yeah. I am that way with some other Star Wars stuff. It's just not the novels.
Yeah. No, I understand. But kind of speaking to what you're talking about earlier, like fandom back in the 90s, like how serious. I mean, I guess it's serious now, but I forget why exactly. I was literally just thinking about this earlier today. It was because, so I'm not going to get into this part of the subject here. That'll be for a Sovryn Tech Prime episode. But Harlan Ellison died today, who is a dear friend of mine, my favorite author of all time. I mean, really, well, I'll save all that for the episode of Sovryn Tech this week. But I was thinking about, it had me thinking about when I met him and got to become friends with him at conventions in like the late 90s and early aughts and everything. This stuff was very personal for us. Like, I mean, and there wasn't, as to where now everything is very cookie cutter and, you have set panels at San Diego Comic-Con and all this, that the production houses and the studios themselves are making happen. As to where at the convention scene in the 90s and the early aughts, it was like the convention organizers like Creation Entertainment or whoever, they'd have to beg and pay, these people, please, would you show up at our convention, blah, blah, blah. And they'd set up all these very impromptu, not so much out of the booking office as they would say, panels and talks and everything at them. This stuff was like, when somebody from the original Battlestar Galactica would come out, that was really deep, when Richard Hatch would come out or whoever, it was a really, really personal thing. So when people went fucking around, with that content, say like the special editions or whatever was coming out. Yeah. I think people took it really personally, that they were changing things because this stuff was deeply meaningful. It's not like today where, you want science fiction, you've got, it's a Chinese buffet that doesn't have a 2-hour limit today.
Right.
It's really crazy.
Well, the quantity has certainly gone up. Not necessarily the quality.
No, the quality
with some exceptions.
Yeah,
you know,
that's why I think the Chinese buffet analogy is still perfect because you're not going to get the best food there.
Right.
So
of course,
we got the Expanse, right?
I was just going to say, I watched the season finale Expanse last night. Oh, baby, that was some good stuff.
Yeah, I probably won't catch it till tomorrow night. But anyway, I do have it ready to go.
I mean, I don't want, this is the Star Wars show, but yeah, I'm a big fan of both the books and the show. And even though they really kind of abridged the book that this season's based on, this half season, it was still really enjoyable.
Yeah. And yeah, Stephanie and I love that show. We're watching it like pretty much minus tonight. We watch it as soon as we get the opportunity, as soon as it's available. So, but anyway, I mean, it was a different time back then, and this stuff was really personal, and you didn't want to go fucking with it. As to where now, I don't know. I mean, I didn't mind the special editions back in the day anyway. Like, I was just so excited to see Star Wars in theaters because I was so young. I was like, oh, this is going to be fucking great, that I didn't mind. I've never minded, like, Lucas's additions to the Blu-rays, where Vader says no, and all this, or at the end of Return of the Jedi and all that. Like, I've never really minded that, but that comes more out of respect for a creator than anything else. But yeah, it was just a different time. I mean, that's the bottom line. And today, I think, like, Disney is clearly trying to create such a giant universe. I guess I'm a little more accepting of the changes that don't come from a sole creator, as it were.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, that's really kind of the thing missing from Star Wars is kind of like the singular vision.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's its biggest problem. There's no question about it that if there's any real failure going on right now, it is because there is no singular vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we might talk about that in a little bit as well. So, but that novelization again is coming out in September, so there will be a review of that on the Star Wars update. Real quick, I do want to, before we get into some of our main topics, there's not a whole ton to say about this book. There was a Han Solo-esque, or Han Solo's in it, so is the character of Kira from Solo: A Star Wars Story. There was kind of a prequel book, as it were, called Most Wanted, that came out on the same day that Solo: A Star Wars Story officially came out. And I read this, and I talked about it for a minute back when we did our Star Wars update in May. And I know you didn't get the chance to read it, Robin.
No, I'm probably not going to read it, to be honest with you.
Well, that's the thing, because you really don't need to. Like this book is so pointless. And in fact, it didn't even, in my opinion, it didn't have what even the most pointless Star Wars books, as far as with the new canon, does have, which is in the last chapter, they give you some kind of nugget of information that has bearing on the entire galaxy. You didn't even get that. Like, it was real. I felt like it was just a very pathetic, uninteresting book. Ironically, IO9 was which is a Gawker property, and Gawker is a property of Univision, blah blah blah. IO9 was treating this as their first Star Wars book to do for a Star Wars book club. I bet they're never going to do another Star Wars book club again, because this book was terrible.
Wow.
Like, that was pure marketing on their part.
I don't read IO9 anymore anyway, so good call.
Yeah. So, we were talking earlier though, before we started recording, and you said, like, you didn't read Phasma either. And when you said that, I was like, that's perfect, because the Phasma book, while the Phasma book gives you like this aura about the character and how she's such a survivalist and take no prisoners, blah, blah, blah. It really had no point. Like, I mean, it was a pointless fucking book, and you get nothing out of it.
Right. And the reason I got that impression was because before that, I don't know if it was around the same time or before that came out, there was the Phasma comic book. And that was basically the same thing. There was no point to that either. Yeah,
other than the first issue, which showed how she miraculously and literally escaped from Starkiller Base.
Right. And that just seemed like to have been done out of necessity and not because they were trying to, write an interesting story.
Yeah, no, I agree. Same. It's the same deal. This was such filler. I already like the character of Kira. This book did nothing to add to that liking. It didn't take anything away either, but it didn't add anything to it, which is pointless by definition. So Star Wars Most Wanted, total bonus. I don't know. If I was a teenager, maybe I'd be into it, because Solo and Kira are pretty much teenagers in it, and maybe then it'd be like sexy for me, but Otherwise,
isn't it under the young adult category of novel?
Yeah. But
So,
I feel like
that fits.
Yeah, it fits, right? I mean, to me, like that.
Whereas some of the other, like the books that they've put under the category, I would actually say are above that and are like in the adult level, like Lost Stars.
Yeah,
I really do not consider that a young adult book. That is, one of the finest books that they've put out for the new canon.
Yeah, absolutely. And ironically, for a young adult book, it's the most adult. Like it has the most mentions of sex,
right?
Next to maybe the actual movie Solo: Star Wars Story, which I thought was very risque at points. So anyway, so Most Wanted, this is totally, I'm going to rate it as optional. In fact, that's going to be my rating system for books from now on, either must read or optional.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, this one is totally optional. It doesn't add shit. It would have been nice even if you got a whiff of Maul, in it.
That was the thing I was just thinking too about the character Kira. Like her backstory, not real. I agree with you. I like the character a lot, but the backstory I don't think is really all that interesting to me. I think what's interesting is her character going forward.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I want more of that.
Right.
But that said, so let's move into our next story here. Because now the claim a claim that went around like last week, and I'm going to be really clear on this. The claim was made by Collider, by Steve Weintraub, also known as Frosty, who is really an insider guy. Like in general, I like Frosty more than I may like a lot of what gets put on Collider's YouTube channel. They are kind of two separate entities. One's the website.
They always have been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even though there's some cross where like Perry Nemiroff will write for the website, and she also is very popular.
Yeah, but she wasn't there at the beginning of the Collider YouTube either. I mean, she kind of came in afterwards just because she was part of Collider already. But yeah, the way I've always understood is the Collider YouTube channel was like a spinoff,
right?
That was completely separate from the website.
Yeah, Frosty, as I understand it, is very well respected in Hollywood. He's like your Scott Mantz kind of guys, he's sort of like that. So anyway, I mean, that gives some credibility to this, that he claimed that there were sources from Lucasfilm who, and I guess the way that this information was presented caused a huge clusterfuck. But bottom line being is the narrative that was being pushed, and the Collider YouTube channel had a hand in this, is that in fact, they did 2 episodes last week of Jedi Council, which is their admittedly very popular Star Wars news show. And on both of those shows, they were talking about, there's not going to be any more Star Wars story spinoffs. This is all over, blah, blah, blah. Now, there were little points where they did say, at least for now, like that they're kind of holding off on it. But the overall narrative was like, oh no, these are over. We're not going to get Obi-Wan. We're not going to get this. We're not going to get that. Blah, 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 blah. And that was the story that people were running with based upon the information that Frosty put out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way I saw this evolve was like you said, the original Collider article came out, and it wasn't as declarative about these projects being on hold. But then it just became a game of telephone where, one news outlet picks it up and tells it and then starts exaggerating it. And the next news outlet does the same thing. And before you know, oh no, Star Wars is falling apart and all these projects are on hold and we're only getting episode 9 and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, that's right. Calling it a game of telephone is perfect.
Yeah. It just snowballed.
Yeah, exactly. But this was at the time, it was, I mean, if you called it rumor, that's exactly what it was, because you're not getting any names. You're not getting any factual statements. Just saying like it's hearsay. Maybe that's the best term to use for it.
Right. And so far as, I mean, we don't know who his sources are. And I mean, it's not like Lucasfilm itself is a monolithic organization. There's different people in the organization, I'm sure, have different perceptions or opinions about what's going on with the company. So, this just could have been one guy's personal opinion about where things were going from what he had seen, which is likely not the whole story.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in a real way, like in these kinds of situations, now I've never been like in a full on Hollywood meeting. I've been in pitch meetings and meetings for, a different industry, but just up the street from it. I'll just say it's in Van Nuys. And, I mean, how those work, like, look, if the head of the studio isn't the one saying it, it could change in a second. Like, I mean, it might as well, and even then it could change in a second, but it might as well, it might as well be meaningless.
Right.
And like, so basically if Frosty's source wasn't Kathleen Kennedy or Bob Iger, who gives a shit? Okay.
Like, yeah. I mean, that's the kind of the way it is with a lot of this Star Wars rumors and news that's been coming out these days.
Right.
And really, like, I can imagine. I think there's probably some validity to that. Maybe they're putting the pause button to reevaluate their strategy on how to market these movies. In fact, I think somebody even did an interview with Lucasfilm. They said we're reevaluating our marketing, which you and I have both had major complaints about that from the beginning.
Yeah.
With Disney Star Wars. And, let's hope it turns out for the best. Of course, I'm sort of like, I'll believe it when I see it sort of thing, but at least they are starting to reevaluate that part of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. Speaking of marketing, how do you feel? Do you think that this could have been like a planted story to try and garner some kind of sympathy from the fan base? I mean, which had just gone, or what appeared to have gone feral. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, it you could be interpreted that way, but at the same time, it also fed into the naysayers saying, "Oh, look, we were right." And I've seen that.
Sure,
I've seen it. So I'm sure. I don't know.
It's tough. I mean, that's the bottom line. Like, again, like we were saying earlier with the Kelly Marie Tran thing, and with the Kathleen Kennedy birthday thing and all that.
Right.
Like, and I made this point on Sovryn Tech when I talked about it. Like, you can't know what's real. Like, you don't know.
Right.
I mean, I could totally believe that there would be this whole. Because, I mean, one could argue that it happened with Ghostbusters with Leslie Jones, where, she ran away from Twitter, and it was all to try and make, and the argument goes from some people, I'm not saying I agree with it, but the argument is that was just marketing to try and get people to go see Ghostbusters. And, it's such a ruthless market right now because it's so saturated that you'll do anything to get, asses in the seats.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know that I believe it. That's what happened here, or that what happened with the other two situations I just mentioned.
The thing I'm thinking though is like if that, like, Disney certainly has a reputation for being ruthless.
Sure,
no doubt about it. I think if that sort of thing was happening, it would be happening, from within the Disney fold, but outside of Lucasfilm. Because I mean, I generally, like, the people that are still the people who are working at Lucasfilm now are still, for the most part, the people who have been there since George Lucas was there.
Yeah, it's tough to imagine John Knoll would be behind this. Right?
Yeah, and those people are I think, for the most part, 100% generally sincere.
Yeah,
in all the stuff that they do and their enthusiasm for the franchise.
Yeah,
and I just can't see them participating in something like that and not having, to have some sort of objection or crisis of conscience.
Sure. No, I think that's a great point, and maybe the best defense against, any argument that this is some kind of AstroTurf. Because I agree. I totally agree. Like half the people there at Lucasfilm, like I say, are ones that have been around, for a while now.
Yeah.
And I just, I can't believe that they'd be okay with any of that. I mean, these are like really, like you said, they're passionate. They love the franchise. They love what they're doing.
It's just, everything I've heard, and I've talked to people who've worked there before. It is generally a company that tries to retain people and goes out of their way to make them feel wanted and welcome and hold on to really great talent. And they do it. They really do it.
Yeah. Well, I think, working with George Lucas, people can have their arguments about him. This is a guy with his heart on his sleeve, and I think he's large, except for like his BSing about how much of this he ever had planned. I think he's largely a straight shooter. I think that has to rub off on you. And he would want to surround. He likes to surround himself with yes men, but he also likes to surround himself, I think, with genuine.
Right. People. That's kind of the downfall as to the corporate atmosphere of Lucasfilm. Is
Right.
maybe people were too accommodating to George and didn't question any of his bad decisions. Because if you go and watch the some of the behind the scenes footage of even episode 1, and there was a clip of there where they were doing the company screening. Yep. With George and all the producers, and George was even kind of like questioning, like, yeah, did I really do the right thing here?
Yeah. Well, Spielberg, I mean, well, anyway, we could go down that for a while, but no, I hear you. I mean, guys like Rick McCallum, well, I think there's a reason Rick McCallum's not at Lucasfilm anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so, okay. I mean, so the spinoff movies, bottom line is that was all rumor. It came out on ABC that, oh, no. Like this stuff might be, a little bit, we're re-strategizing or something like that. They didn't like give any solid dates for, say, an Obi-Wan movie or anything like that. But bottom line
that hasn't even been announced.
No, right.
It's never even been acknowledged.
Yeah, exactly.
Aside from that, I think that Ewan McGregor said that, yes, we've talked about it.
Right. So, but ABC said, no, this just isn't true. And look, like I was saying earlier, I don't mind if they want to just concentrate on episode 9, see what episode 9 does before they figure out what their next step is going to be outside of the one thing that nobody's complaining about, which is the Jon Favreau a TV series that's going to be on Disney streaming channel starting in 2019.
Does that seem early to you? Do you think they're actually going to hit that date?
Oh, I think they can pull it off because they said like, so they what was I think they said 6 episodes, like they had 6 episodes already written. Okay. They were going with that. Okay. I mean, like
I was thinking, I didn't realize it was that limited. And the number of episodes they're doing, because I was thinking, what seems to be today the traditional is about 12.
Yeah, I think they're going to do 12, but they said they already had 6 like flying, like that they're rolling.
Okay.
So I'd agree with you. The thing is, Star Trek Discovery has been a very enlightening experience for me. Like the production on that, and they rolled out like some very heavy episodes, and they made them very quickly. Like it was shocking how quick that they did a turnaround on those. So I think they can pull this off. But also, Star Trek Discovery got delayed twice. So
exactly.
Star Wars too. I don't know, but concentrate on that. Concentrate on episode 9, and see what happens. See what the reactions are to that, and then Star Wars is back on fire. Great, then go ahead and do your Star Wars stories.
I mean, Star Wars is always going to be on fire to a certain degree. I mean, I'll tell you one thing that I'm sure neither of us is worried about in the least is Resistance.
Right, the animated series,
just not like no questions.
Yep, I mean, Filoni's in charge. You're just like, all right, well, this will be fine.
Right.
Now, speaking of people, I agree with you there, and that's again, I know some other commentators have talked about this. I really do think that TV, as it were, as in not in theaters, could be Star Wars really like where it's really going to shine.
Yeah.
Even brighter perhaps than it ever has before.
Right. It'd be interesting to see where the Favreau series goes and how successful it is. I'm fairly optimistic about it, but here again, I just kind of waiting and seeing how it turns out, because it could turn out to be like a really big deal. Because I could definitely see them, like, imagine if they did pull back on some of the Star Wars stories, and instead of doing them as movies, adapted them as sort of like a miniseries for television or something. Mm-hmm. I could see that working for them really well with something like Obi-Wan.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. In fact, well, we'll get into this other subject in a second. Kind of like it's more of a question than it is a story. But before you know what? Let's get into it. So, the Rian Johnson trilogy. I know we have more we want to say about Kathleen Kennedy, but we can get to that right after this. The Rian Johnson trilogy, which was announced. Here's something that maybe you don't want to take the risk of putting in theaters.
Right.
Like maybe. So the question that I posted, or that I put in, we have a document that you and I work off of here for the show. I said, should Lucasfilm back off of Rian Johnson's trilogy? I mean, I'm intrigued to see what Rian Johnson would do. Like, I'm not opposed to him doing this sort of thing. I get the sense that that's the entire purpose of the Canto Bight sequence in The Last Jedi, was for him to have something that he could build off of and a story that he wants to tell. And I'm not even saying that that might be a bad story. I mean, it was a bad part of the movie. I mean, almost universally agreed that that was shit in that film.
Yeah. And I was going to say that too. I mean, like, whether or not you like The Last Jedi or not, it does seem to be a kind of a consensus that was like the weak link in the chain of that movie.
Yeah. I mean, killed pacing, and to make the movie so long, to have 15 minutes of that nonsense, they easily could have. Anyway, that necessarily shouldn't have been there, but maybe they forced it in because this is the crux of Rian Johnson's trilogy to come up. But now here's the thing: is that if they want to do Rian Johnson's trilogy and put it on the streaming service, I think they have a lot less risk.
Oh yeah,
they can still put the same amount of money into it, and go ahead. Like I don't think that necessarily hurts anything. But
you know what? The other thing I'm hoping to with if I hope the other conversation going on Lucasfilm right now is like, we really need to scale back the budgets on these things, because I think they could do so much more with much less.
Yeah, with more characters instead of effects.
Right. I mean, the original Star Wars movie, New Hope, that was done on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, what, 10 million, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and just look at what they accomplished with that. I mean, I know George was never 100% satisfied with getting everything that he had envisioned for that movie, but what they were able to accomplish in that first movie was just astounding by any standard.
Yeah, literally groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, like they genuinely changed the cinematic game.
Exactly. Not only did they change the cinematic game, but like they invented whole new technologies that are still being used in film today.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that. I mean, the way that part of how they were able to pull that off is like they bought, I forget what they call the cameras, but they bought like these ancient cameras that were literally selling, I mean, almost literally selling for pennies.
Right.
And that's how they were able to kind of pull it off.
Right.
I don't know that Disney can make cuts like that, but I agree with you completely that, I mean, well, this is the same thing. Actually, same thing happened with Star Trek, the motion picture. Here's a great example. Star Trek, the motion picture goes like 10, 20 million above budget. Just stupid money. And so, but it does enough to where, okay, yeah, let's make Star Trek 2. And of course, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan would go on to be, widely considered the greatest Star Trek movie of all time, even if it's not the most successful of all time. But Star Trek 2 was made with a TV studio production team, not with a movie studio production team.
And that's originally started because it was going to be Star Trek Phase 2, and then it turned into the motion picture.
Well, right. So, but with Star Trek 2, like to cut costs, they went with a TV production team.
Right.
But because they concentrated on, well, let's make this a great fucking movie, or, great characters and story and all that, instead of so much these, crazy high production values, which I still love from the motion picture. It worked. And again, it's widely considered the best of the bunch. So I think that, I think Star Wars could do the same thing.
We've seen this throughout Hollywood over and over again. I mean, I think about like the Matrix movies, how like the first movie was done on a relatively small budget, made a ton of money, and then the studio is just like, okay, let's throw all the money at these people. And I actually think that produced an inferior product by them having too much money.
Yeah, and like a lot of free reign. As well. Which,
if I know they'll probably never do anything like this, but if I was in charge over at Lucasfilm, I would actually create sort of like a art house sub studio for Lucasfilm, where you could bring in young directors and smaller budgets and let people experiment. And don't spend a whole lot of money on it. If they produce something that's really of quality, put it out in there in the world, whether it be, on streaming service or something like that, or on YouTube or whatever. And if it doesn't work and, they get bad reaction to it, they don't have to release it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot of skin in the game if they do that.
Right. Hedge your bets.
Yeah. That is brilliant. I think. I really think they should do that. Oh man, because instantly what came to my mind, first off, look, these things don't have to be 2 hours a pop. You can do a 30-minute, have fun with like a little 30-minute production or something.
Right.
That's a special of some kind,
Right.
And not holiday special, but like I reminded me of my favorite Star Wars fan film of all time from back in, I guess maybe from the 90s. Was called Broken Allegiance, Star Wars Broken Allegiance. And this was 30 minutes. Obviously it had a low fucking budget. It was made by fans, just like these dudes in Australia.
Right.
and it was awesome. It was so like it had everything. It had great story. The effects were pretty good. You know,
Right,
I mean, they
right.
match.
Well, even before that, they had that. It was kind of a parody, but they had the Troops.
Troops. Yeah, that's like the most popular fan film.
Yeah. But I mean, that was one that really kind of like opened people's eyes to like the world of Star Wars fan films.
Yeah.
That was a lot of people's first experience in that world. But I'm thinking like it's also consistent with like the way George did things, because he had Lucasfilm proper, and then he split off all these sort of like sub companies like Skywalker Sound and THX and LucasArts, and he, for the most part, let those people do their own thing. And sometimes it didn't work out, and sometimes it did. And when it did, it was really good stuff.
Yeah, no, it does fit with like it reminds me even of a team that Lucas was with before Lucasfilm, which is American Zoetrope that he did with Francis Ford Coppola, where that was like this little small indie studio that was doing effectively prestige films on shoestring budgets. And actually American Zoetrope still exists and is run by Coppola's kids, and I mean, still does great prestige films. Prestige meaning they know they're not going to be a blockbuster. Like this is something just to make critics happy.
Right. But it's something that potentially a blockbuster could come out of,
Yeah, something special could come out of. I mean, or it's something that at the very least is memorable and that you can build the blockbusters on top of, because you can still like please the fans or whoever else with this really far out thing. And like I said, just build the money makers on top of it.
And it's the way you innovate. I mean, it literally is necessity being the mother of all invention. If you give these people limited resources and say, hey, go at it, they're going to come up with new and interesting ways to do things. And maybe even what they produce isn't going to be of great value, but potentially some of the processes or technology they come up with in producing those things could be of value to the greater studio.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant idea. Well, let me ask you though, like straightforward. I mean, do you think that they should cancel, the Rian Johnson trilogy? Should they back off? What do you think they should do with that?
I think if they were going to put anything on indefinite hold, that should be the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that.
I mean, and we talked before about this, about, the sort of the backlash against The Last Jedi, and how, we kind of think a lot of these people are sort of puffing themselves up to look like they have greater numbers they do. And another thing we found out about the Solo or the thing with Kelly Marie Tran is apparently some of the people who organized this were part of that Give Us Legends group.
Oh,
are still pissed off about them canceling the Legends continuity, and so these people just won't let go. And I can understand it to a certain degree, but they're really just being kind of really negative and nasty about it. These were the same people that, were like going out to theaters when The Force Awakens came out, and they were intentionally spoiling the movie, that Han Solo dies.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can sympathize with them to some degree as well, like wanting that, because, I invested a ton of time in the EU.
Right.
At the same time, like I'm not going to kid myself and think that like I have any sway on Bob Iger's decision making.
Right, and here again, these people they're not a big group. They're a very small but coordinated group of people that just like they have a specific goal in mind. And fortunately, the way that they see themselves achieving that is by tearing down the Disney canon.
Yeah, which is crazy because great stuff's happening. I mean, we got Filoni there, folks. Let him do his shit.
Right.
I mean, man.
Well, the funny thing is I've come across a couple of these people, and they haven't even like watched the Clone Wars, and that's not. I mean, that's part of the Disney canon, but that was all George.
Yeah, that was part of the EU.
They refuse to watch it. They still think it's just purely a kid's show, and I'm like, no, you're missing out. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was Star Wars on literally the grandest scale ever made. I mean,
yeah, really. Yeah, I mean, it's still like probably one of the most epic stories in all of Star Wars is that whole, following Anakin and Ahsoka.
Right.
And leading into Rebels too. Because I mean, really, that is kind of like a cohesive story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, well, let's switch it up just a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about rumors that, Kathleen Kennedy is going to get ousted because of all the stuff that we've been talking about, even though half of it's bullshit. I mean, what do you think about this? Like, I mean, do you think this is happening? Are they bringing in Feige? What's happening?
No, I think it's just more FUD, and for all the reasons that we were talking about earlier. And the funny thing is like people started picking this up and taking it as gospel truth, and they started, prematurely, cheering and celebrating. And here we are. I mean, this came out earlier in the month that this rumor came out, and here we are. We're at the end of the month, and nothing's happened, and nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, this is one of the things where. So, I mean, we do the Star Wars update because there is news to talk about, no doubt about it, with Star Wars. Even just the official stuff that comes out from Lucasfilm, we could talk about once a month, certainly. But, there's an entire industry now around Star Wars news. Right. And you kind of have to have news to talk about every week or every day. Like if you're making StarWars.com or one of those.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to talk about a conspiracy of people, drumming up news to create, business for themselves, it's the industry surrounding Star Wars and not literally Star Wars itself.
Yeah, this has been a problem for me for a while. And The Last Jedi really drove a lot of that home for me, is that the industry around Star Wars is a problem.
Well, I started noticing it before that too. Mm-hmm. I mean, I got to we were talking about Collider earlier, and during their first year of doing Collider Jedi Council, I watched every episode, and after a while, I just started, it started stinking a little for me, and I'm like, there's something not cool going on here.
Right.
And people are, they were like one of the biggest proponents behind pushing this theory that Snoke was Plagueis.
Yeah.
I remember they were the biggest advocates of that, and they just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And it literally drove some people into a frenzy about it. And so when, finally it comes around time, the movie comes out, well, people are disappointed because they didn't get what they expected, because these people that have really no insider knowledge whatsoever have been pumping this story just for their own notoriety.
Yeah. I mean, so real quick, I don't want to add to it. Like, I know some people are saying there's still a chance, that Snoke is Plagueis. If Snoke comes back in 9, which, I mean, again, there's no plan, so there's always still a chance, right? Because since they don't have a unified vision on things. But regardless, no, I mean, your point is still sound. And that's something that we really got to pay attention to, is that a lot of this stuff, it's FUD. I mean, it's news for news sake. It's not actually.
And it doesn't even have to be FUD, because I mean, I don't really consider the whole Plagueis thing FUD. It was just that, they caught on to this popular idea that was being whispered about in the fandom and just really started hyping the fuck out of it, whereas people weren't able to manage their expectations anymore.
Yeah.
And that hurt the franchise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know I was pissed off because I was not buying into it, but I was like, okay, well, the arguments, all right. Yeah, sure. But I mean, once you realize that there's no unifying vision going on right now, which does need to happen. Then you're just like, okay, there's literally no point to predicting jack shit, unless it's something to do within Filoni's show, who that's really, I mean, this is the thing. So yeah, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy's going anywhere. At least she's not going anywhere until Dave Filoni is maybe 60 or something, and he's just going to run everything.
Well, I mean, I've said it before, that guy's the heir to the empire.
Yep.
And whether or not he takes over the company or not, I don't care. I mean, he is the premier creative force in Lucasfilm right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Because if you wanted, that's the other thing to do. If you wanted a unified vision for Star Wars, put it in his hands.
Yeah. At the very least, get him in every pitch meeting, get him in every decision. I mean, he needs to be, he needs to be on the left hand like Lucifer to God, and God being Kathleen Kennedy, I mean, that's calling the shots here and ready to rebel if needed, I suppose, too.
Right.
I mean, that's really what I mean, because people are talking about, well, they're going to bring in Feige, they're going to, whatever Bob Iger's actually calling stuff, which there might be some truth to that.
I think Bob Iger's been calling stuff for quite a while now.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's part of the problem, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I think, here's the thing. Unless you're going to tell me that Filoni is taking over, like I don't even really want Kathleen Kennedy to go anywhere. I mean, she's obvious. I think there's been more good decisions made than bad. Like to sit down and listen to John Knoll talk about a one-liner, and end up making Rogue One. Well, that was a brilliant move on her part and a complete leap of faith that I think totally paid off and was well done, for what it is. And so, yeah, I mean, unless you're going to give me some other kind of name of what's happening, I call bullshit and I don't even want it.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that really I've taken issue with her, and I can't even really directly lay this on her feet. Here again, I think a lot of it's Bob Iger, but the just kind of the mess they've made with the directors, firing people right and left and switching things out and stuff like that. I mean, like, do your due diligence and know that these people have what you're envisioning for Star Wars, solidly in their hearts and minds,
right? And
then commit to it. But here again, I don't think this is Kathleen Kennedy. I think I really do think it's Bob Iger, because a lot of the stuff I read, I mean, he sounds like a micromanager.
Yeah.
And I think Star Wars is suffering from micromanagement. I think it seems pretty clear that Feige has his territory over there with Marvel, and Bob Iger's probably too afraid to mess with it.
Yeah,
otherwise he's going to jinx it. But he got involved with Star Wars right off the bat from the very beginning, and he's been in there with his hands and feet, knee deep in it since the start.
Sure. I mean, well, we're talking about a $4 billion deal and a whole shit ton of stock options.
Right. So... Well, I think they just came out recently. They've made back like half of what they paid for Lucas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they haven't even recouped their investment on that yet.
Yeah. So I can imagine.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, he really needs to step back and think about the long game and whether or not, kind of hovering over the Lucasfilm with the seeing eyeglass is really such a good idea, and is whether or not that's really healthy for the entire franchise.
Yeah, because it's the flukes that really do well. Like, honestly, I think, speaking of the Marvel movies, which you just have to compare it to because it's in house, the Marvel movies, like the really great ones, have been actually, in my opinion, Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. Now, the brilliant thing has been that Feige has pretty much told James Gunn, I'm hands off. You go ahead and have a good time.
Right.
And they become just like the most popular movies, and they let James Gunn just run wild.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think Iger would do well to just back the fuck off.
Right.
And let.
But here again, I think that had a lot to do with Feige being a better judge of talent.
Yeah, sure.
Than Iger. I mean, yeah. I don't know that whether or not Kathleen Kennedy is a good or bad judge of talent, because I don't know whether or not she's been making these decisions so far as picking the directors. But they really need to get it down solid so far as who they try to bring into this. And I honestly do think letting Colin Trevorrow go was a big mistake.
Yeah, agreed. And honestly, now that I think about it, I'd love for them to bring in James Gunn. Like let him go nuts. Yeah. Because that guy's brilliant.
It's obvious that Star Wars is a big influence on those movies too.
Oh, sure. Oh, all the way. Yeah.
The dynamic between everything. The crew, it's all there. It's obviously got more of a comedic element to it, but I mean, at its core, I mean, you could just plop those characters into the Star Wars universe, and the story would work just fine.
Yeah. I mean, I feel those movies are so unique. They stand apart from. I mean, I know now they're in like the Avengers and everything, but they stand apart from the rest of the Marvel universe. You can totally enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy without watching a single other Marvel film,
right?
And it's beautiful and it works, and they're just awesome. So okay, well, there we go. Kathleen Kennedy. We don't think she's going anywhere. And there's no real reason. If anything, just have Bob Iger step the fuck off if that's actually what's going on there. Real quick, this news just came out today. How do you feel about, and I mean, this is Lucasfilm related anyway. How do you feel about with Indiana Jones 5? They said John Kasdan's going to be coming in to do the writing. How do you feel about that?
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, let's see what happens. I mean, I think I said in the last episode of the Star Wars update that I don't necessarily think John Kasdan is the best writer in the world that like a lot of people seem to think. I think he writes great characters and he writes great character stories, but so far as like plotting out a coherent story, not so much.
I mean, and Daddy Lawrence isn't going to be there, so I don't know. Or at least that's the rumor right now. So
is Spielberg going to be involved still?
I don't know either. I'm not sure. It sounds like they're just handing it all over to John Kasdan, which I mean, like, go ahead.
Really, that like back in the days in the 80s, that was a great matchup between Lucas and Kasdan, because Lucas had his strengths in great stories, and Kasdan, propped Lucas up in the characters.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can easily argue, and I know you've mentioned this before. You have issues with A New Hope, but I mean, the weak point of that movie is the characterization.
Yeah,
and when they brought in Kasdan, and of course, with Empire Strikes Back, we have to also take, of course,
Lay Brackett,
exactly. I was going to say so. I mean, those three people, I think, was just like a perfect storm for that movie. And here again, like it seems like they keep trying to go back to Kasdan, trying to bottle lightning again. And I'm just sort of like, yeah, maybe, but I'm kind of skeptical as to whether or not you can pull it off.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. With Indy 5. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is still in my head, and I don't want it to be. I've only ever seen it once, but it's the most memorable Indiana Jones movie to me, and not
really,
obviously.
See, to me, it's my Highlander 2.
Whoa. I love the Renegade version of Highlander 2.
It's okay.
but I mean, anyway, no. I mean, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is it's so bad.
It really is.
Yeah. But no, I get the Highlander 2 joke, like that. It's just not canon, right?
Right.
We'll just pretend that didn't happen. Anyway, so I thought that was interesting news. So we'll see what Johnny can do. As far as that goes. But all right, why don't we let's get out of the stories segment of this. We're probably not going to I don't think we're going to get into the comic books again this month.
Okay.
But that's okay, because there's major story arcs that are coming to an end, I think, in the next month. So we can have like a good broad talk about them. But first thing we'll get into is the fan production of the month that we do every month on the Star Wars Update. And then we're going to get into a new segment that I started, I think, last month, which is the question of the month. And I think we got a doozy. We got a fun one. But the fan production of the month is related to one from a couple months ago, which I had said was going to be coming out. And that is the next album from metal band Galactic Empire. And what they did in their first album, which was just a self-titled Galactic Empire, they take your classic Star Wars themes, all the tracks that you have on your soundtracks and everything, and they metalize it. They put it to metal. They break out the guitar, the whole thing. And the first album, Robin and I both agreed, holy shit, this was awesome. It was just brilliantly done. And now episode 2, did you get the chance to listen to this, Robin, or no?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it, but I haven't gotten it yet.
Sure. Yeah. So I did pick this up. This came out at the beginning of May. Actually, I think it came out on Force Day. It came out on May 4th. And it's good. Like, in fact, it has Love Pledge in the arena on it. So, it has the love theme, even though I think it was already kind of part of the initial album. It's not as solid as the first one. And I was disappointed that they didn't do Luke and Leia, which is the track that I was really wanting from their first album. But this is still totally enjoyable. Lots of fun. Probably the best track on there is, what is it? How do you pronounce that? Scherzo for X-Wings, which is from, I think that's from The Force Awakens. And that's a really cool, and it opens up with March of the Resistance as well, which of course is very similar to the Trade Federation theme.
Right.
But those those two openers are really solid. But then after that, I mean, it works, and I listened to it a lot, but it didn't strike me as hard as the first album. But I still think it's well worth listening to. It's well worth having in a collection, and just rocking out to every once in a while. It doesn't feel as, it doesn't have as much punch, and maybe it's because they had to go for like some of the not so bigger tracks from the Star Wars, thematic history. Again, it just doesn't have that same punch. But I did enjoy the hell out of it still. Like I still thought it was a lot of fun to go through. I've worked out to it. I mean, and that's my metric for a lot of things. Can I work out to it over and over again if I can? All right, that's pretty good. So I liked it. The other standout track is The Emperor from Return of the Jedi. That they do a metal version of that, and that sounds really that sounds properly evil. I'll put it that way.
Nice.
And that's always been one of my favorite tracks from Star Wars history for a while anyway, which is like in the Emperor's throne room in Return of the Jedi. So yeah, I really dug it. You're definitely going to want to check it out, Robin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a link in the show notes if people want to get their hands on it. And you can click through that. And of course that's through the stuff.sexandsciencehour.com link, which that show, we just restarted that for season 6. So woo, yeah, hell yeah, baby. So definitely pick that up if you want to. It's again, like I said, it's a good time to listen to. So, all right. Do you want to get into our question of the month?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do this, and I'll let you start it off if you want.
Sure.
The question is the best old EU book. Now, I think EU, of course, just to explain quick for people. I'm sure if you're listening to Star Wars Update, you already know this, but the EU is short for Expanded Universe, which really started, or I think became like a thing when Heir to the Empire came out by Timothy Zahn back in the early 90s, the novel that like really saved Star Wars at the time, in my opinion.
Right.
And then you had like all these other novels, and then Dark Horse came out with Dark Empire, the comic book Dark Empire, and all that. And this created the Expanded Universe, because at the time we didn't think we were going to get any more movies. And even after the prequels came out, we still had all of these books that came out: the Thrawn trilogy, the Jedi Academy trilogy, the Black Fleet Crisis. You go down the list of them. Were all considered canon, even though we were getting new movies, and also we were getting the Clone Wars and other things. So the Expanded Universe was really, really serious. And this is the thing that when Disney bought Lucasfilm, and bought Star Wars in 2013, that they completely rebooted. They said, all right, we're going to forget the EU. The only things that are going to count are the TV shows and the movies, and that's it. And everything else, we're going to start a new, really cohesive canon. So, but the Expanded Universe, and part of the reason I think a lot of people were disappointed that Disney did that, there were some real shining moments in the Expanded Universe. Now, I specifically said book, and so I want to go for novels. So I don't know if any of your answers were comic books, Robin, but we could save that for another time, because I think that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. I know we could. I mean, it might be hard to narrow it down to a book.
Yeah. Even if it has to be a trilogy or whatever.
Yeah. I think you know where I'm going with this. I mean, like,
sure.
Really, I mean, nothing beats the Thrawn trilogy. Just not only in terms of storytelling, but just the impact that it had. Like you said, it pretty much saved the Star Wars franchise at the time. Now, I mean, like, for me personally, Star Wars still alive through the West End Games role-playing game. And that was a huge deal to me, even before the EU got its start. But I mean, and like one could argue that West End really started the EU.
Yes,
because those were the source books that they gave the authors to Timothy Zahn and who was it who did Dark Empire?
Begins with a V.
Tom Veitch.
Yeah, Tom Veitch. That's
it.
Yeah.
So they both drew from that material, so far as kind of like the technical and just the atmosphere and feel of the universe.
Sure.
Beyond the movies, and but just like they the Thrawn trilogy it just exploded in your mind.
Yeah,
it was just so brilliant, and I have a feeling I know what yours is, and it's definitely a great one.
I can pick out one book. I
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
And I think most people that have listened to me over the years will know what I am going to pick.
Yeah, and it's definitely up there for me. You know, and I know also we talked about this earlier, was the Darth Bane books.
Right.
Those to me are the other highlight of the series. And the other books that Timothy Zahn did that weren't the Thrawn trilogy, but they had that Thrawn duology.
Yeah, the Hand of Thrawn.
Hand of Thrawn. Yeah.
Yeah, he also did other
past and Vision of the Future.
And they expanded upon like stuff that was talked about in the Thrawn trilogy. Like he wrote the book Outbound Flight.
Right. Which even tied into episode 1, which I thought was brilliant at the time.
Yes. Yeah. Nice retconning.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people don't realize, with the Thrawn trilogy, like that set a lot of rules. Like
right.
Because I think a lot of people would get into the EU at the time and they'd say, well, why isn't the ghost of Obi-Wan around, or the ghost of Yoda, or all these other people? And it's because in the Thrawn trilogy, in the very first in Heir to the Empire.
Yeah, that was one of the early chapters.
Yeah, like Obi-Wan appears one last time and says, yeah, we're passing on. We're going elsewhere. And we're not going to show up again. Of course, now, in the new EU, or in the new canon, like with The Last Jedi, obviously you get Yoda, 30 some odd years later. But that would not be so in the old EU. So but there are a lot of little rules laid down, including some different explanations in a way of what the Clone Wars could have been and what it could have meant.
Yeah. We have to have a discussion about that sometime, because there's a whole sort of universe out there that doesn't really exist anymore, but it was an alternate vision of the Clone Wars.
Are you talking about what Mattel had, or was it Mattel?
That's part of it, certainly. That's certainly part of it.
Yeah, agreed. And in fact, this is something I would love to see somebody pick up the ball and run with, was that Mattel, what did they call that line? They were planning a toy line in 85.
Right.
I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, they planned this entire Star Wars. I mean, and they went pretty far. There was some prototypes and everything done where there was going to be this entire storyline. It's after Return of the Jedi. The Clone Wars are going to heat back up. Tarkin is still alive, which I thought that was cool. And a whole bunch of other stuff. They were going to, effectively, this toy line was going to allow, it was going to be a bit of a hybrid between like a role-playing game that you could do yourself, but it was going to give you the sandbox to create your own stories after.
Right. It definitely had sort of this, participatory, element to it.
Yeah. It feels like the FPAA Living Force campaigns or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it really felt like that. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that was a thing. And that was based upon some differing concepts of what the Clone Wars was,
right?
Which also were a major part of the Thrawn trilogy with the character of Jorah C'baoth.
Right. Well, I mean, like, clones were a huge part of those novels, especially the last one, the Last Command.
Yeah,
lots of clones show up in that,
including one of Luke.
Yeah, right. And I even remember, well, even the book before that, the Dark Force Rising. It was a huge shocker to find out that, where's the Empire getting all of these stormtroopers from? Oh, right. They've been cloning them. Right.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of these ideas, which would end up changing, like even from the prequels onward, not necessarily something that Disney did. So yeah.
Star Wars, the epic continues.
Yeah, that's it. The epic. Yeah. I was going to say the word continues is in there. But,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But people, actually, it might have been the first or second issue of the Sovryn Tech newsletter. I shared a mini documentary about that, and it is just the most amazing thing. And my mind just went on fire when they started talking about it. It's like,
I think I sent that to you, didn't I?
I think you sent it to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all I could think of when I saw that was like, oh, fucking A, I want to write this. Right. like I want to do that. That is great. But anyway, so, but that wasn't even necessarily part of the old EU, but it could have been a progenitor to it, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like I say, we'll talk about this another time, but I mean, like, during what they called the dark times in Star Wars, there was a really healthy fan fiction community. And some of the stuff in there was really top quality, and they had different ideas about the Clone Wars, and a lot of them were based off of stuff that George had said in articles, or that had sort of seeped out
Right.
And they were just taking elements and ideas and incorporating and just there was some really interesting stuff out there.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think your choice of the Thrawn trilogy is, I mean, that's easily the easy pick and a right one.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of struggled with that. It's like, oh, this is the easy pick, but I mean, it's really truly where my heart is.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Thrawn is, has been for a long time, probably next to Princess Leia, probably my favorite character, or I mean, even beyond Princess Leia now, but my favorite character in Star Wars history, because he's Sherlock Holmes in space.
Yeah, same here. I mean, up until Ahsoka, he was my favorite character too.
Sure, right on. Yeah. So any other standouts?
Like I said, the Darth Bane books were really good.
Rule of Two were great. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the X-Wing books were pretty good.
Oh yeah, especially that initial run. Pretty much up until they went to Wraith Squadron. That was a really cool series. You're right about that. Yeah.
Right. Actually, some of the Han Solo at Star's End, or even Splinter to the Mind's Eye. I mean, those kind of get left out when you're talking about the Star Wars EU, because that was really before the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah.
And Thrawn trilogy is generally accepted to be the beginning of the EU, but they did later on, kind of work those into canon.
Yes.
The EU canon. And those were good, and the Lando books too. Those were all well written, decent books.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that completely. And I will. So my pick, I guess if you're ready to get into that. In fact, you know what? I'll let you call it, because I know you know what it is, even though
Shadows of the Empire. I mean,
fucking right. This was, I mean, people got to understand, and I totally agree with you on everything you said about the Thrawn trilogy. And I've said it many times myself. That's what saved Star Wars. That's what brought it back into the popular mindset. That's when you started getting Boba Fett t-shirts in stores again. I mean, it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
I think it's a bigger deal than the prequels. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it relaunched the merchandising, because they came out with new Star Wars action figures and all this other stuff. I mean, and this was all way before the special editions and the new the prequel trilogy. So I mean, I think in a lot of ways, it made it possible. The EU made that later stuff in Star Wars possible.
Certainly. Yeah, no, I agree. So, no argument from me on any of that. But here's the thing, is that we didn't, at the time, we're talking this fluctuating time in the 90s here, where it's not the dark times, but, Star Wars is coming back and everything, but, we don't know what we're going to get. And we don't exactly, even though there was the interview, I think, that he did with Leonard Maltin for the last series, or the last time that the original trilogy, as the original trilogy and not the special editions.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Where he mentioned that there is like a prequel trilogy, and that he might have been working on. He mentions the special edition in these opening interviews with Leonard Maltin, which I've watched over and over again, because at the time you didn't have YouTube, so you just rewatched these funny things at the beginning of VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. So, but regardless of that, we didn't know if we were going to get movies. I mean, we had no idea if that was going to happen. The next best thing that we got was this, not just a book, but even the book alone, I still think I still think it's enjoyable for a lot of reasons. But you get this multimedia event, which is Shadows of the Empire. Yeah. It's a video game, art book. It's everything except for a movie, even a soundtrack by Joel McNeely. The whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that book, that transmedia event, was the first truly successful test model for that kind of, sort of marketing and way to do a story. I mean, really, it defined what transmedia is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it was just amazing how much of it there was, because again, it was literally everything except the film. They did it all. There was the toy line. Yep. There was the making books. They even did a making book. I mean, it was crazy, how much they pushed this, and it was a really interesting idea to run with. But
they had the comic books too.
Right. They had the comic book and a sequel comic book series. Shows the Empire Evolution. But the book itself was still genuinely great, in my opinion, by Steve Perry, not the lead singer from Journey. But but it was a great. I mean, it was a short book. I remember I read it well inside of maybe a day. I mean, it was a super short book. And the writing might not have been the best, but what was so incredible about it was you got Darth Vader again.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was something that was huge, but you were getting all of these characters in this magical time between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And I think one of the proofs of its strength and its power as a story was that, yeah, I mean, in the comic book, they might have dealt with it a little bit, but there was no mention of Han Solo. You didn't get that at all. I mean, you had kind of a placeholder with Dash Rendar, but he wasn't so much of a big deal in the novelization of it. And I'm trying to kind of keep this to the novelization in a way. But the story did so well, people really loved it, and there was no Han Solo, which some people would argue that the problem or for a lot of people, I remember back in the day with the prequels, is that, well, hey, wait, where's the scoundrel? We need a scoundrel character. We're not getting one. So I thought that, and the other thing, go ahead.
You mentioned Darth Vader too, and the great part of that was not only did they bring Darth Vader back, but they created a foil for him that wasn't part of the traditional cast of Star Wars Rebel characters.
Right.
And Prince Xizor.
Yes.
Which is just that was brilliant. I'm
still waiting for that character to come into the new canon, because I thought he was a great character, and a very sexy character. Like this, he could engage in a degree of mind control with these pheromones and everything. He's seducing Princess Leia, which I thought was so fucking hot as a teenager. I still think it's hot. I mean, it's questionable, and actually I had conversations around this moment. Stephanie, wait a minute. So if a species, so Prince Xizor is this, or however they ever wanted to pronounce it. He's what's called a Phaleen, which those are canon because they're in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's this lizard.
So Filoni bought them back in the Clone Wars too.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So, so this lizard humanoid species called the Phaleen, they have this ability where they can, project, or, they can emit pheromones that, make the often female members of other species, makes their minds very cloudy, and open to suggestion, as it were. And so, there's a point where he's using this to really, in a very real sense, mind control Princess Leia in a way. But the ethical argument is wait a minute, but he's just doing what he naturally does when he, wants to have sex or something.
Right.
Is that somehow unethical to use pheromones that his body produces? And I mean, anyway, it's an argument that, or not an argument, it's a fun argument.
Well, I'll tell you what would make it even more fun is if they did decide to bring that character back and they gender flipped it. I think it would be brilliant.
I would love that. Or just have another Phaleen. That's fine too.
Yeah.
But, however they want to do it.
Right. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be Xizor, but I mean, bring in a female Phaleen that, come in and successfully seduces Luke Skywalker or Han Solo or whoever,
That would be pretty awesome. I'm down for that. Yeah. So you had that. I mean, you had the sexy elements, which was rare and almost unheard of in Star Wars at the time.
Right.
I mean, you also had not just what the Phaleen could do, but you had Guri, who was this human replica droid that looked like a woman, beautiful woman. And Prince Xizor says right in Shadows of the Empire that she will join him in the bathtub and they'll have the time, and I just love that. I thought that was so sexy. And it was really up until maybe Lost Stars. It might've been the sexiest Star Wars book or the most sex filled.
What was sexy about that too is she was immune to his pheromones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, she was a droid and, one could argue how programmed she was, but you do find out later on that she had her own free will. So
exactly.
Yeah. So Shadows of the Empire, there's really before or since there hasn't been anything quite like it. And it was such a special moment to get a story between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which is rarely even done in the new canon.
Well, they tried to do that. What was it? Heir to the Jedi. And it just really was not that good of a book.
Yeah, that didn't work. And they did it because there's the Princess Leia, not young adult, but young person book.
Oh, right.
Moving Target or something. Gray? What is it?
You're talking about the one written by Claudia Gray? Or
no. This is a different one. It's it's called Moving Target or something, but it's pretty much the mission of how they got Shuttle Tydirian. That's what you find out in the book.
Okay, I haven't read that one.
Yeah, there's 4 of them that they did at the same time.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that was for a while. That was the only thing we got in between those, in between that moment of Star Wars history. So yeah, right. Shadows of the Empire really, stands tall for me. Outside of that, I think that, and in fact, it's kind of sad, because, well, A.C. Crispin, she wrote a trilogy, a Han Solo trilogy, not the one by Brian Daley that you mentioned earlier, Robin, but she wrote a Han Solo trilogy that did give him an origin story. And honestly, they were great. It was a tremendous book series. I think it's The Hutt's Gambit is the first one. Mm-hmm. And like everything, I mean, you get the encounter with Boba Fett, you get stuff with Lando. I mean, you get all of it. And there's a love story in it. The whole thing. Oh, yeah. It's tremendous.
Well, they had some other books too. I don't think they were by the same author. It was like they had Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina and Bounty Hunter or something. Yeah, in fact, I think they were written by K.W. Jeter, who did like the Blade Runner sequels.
Yeah, now KW is a hell of a guy. So yeah. I've had dinner with that man.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Boy, stories. Yeah, KW Jeter has done stuff for for Star Wars as well. But yeah, there were those anthology books that were interesting at the time as well. But yeah, that Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin would if Shadows of the Empire wasn't there, it easily topped my list, because I mean, I remember I was in high school, I could not stop reading it. It was so good. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot of like really great books, and the books started to build upon themselves. Not that I mind that, but you really couldn't enjoy them as standalone adventures anymore, except for one. There was a book that came out pretty late in the canon in the EU called The Adventures of Luke Skywalker. It actually had a much longer name. It was The Adventures of Luke Skywalker and something of Mata.
Really? I thought that was part of the new canon.
I don't think that one's part of the new canon. That was like really, really late, but that was fun. Like if you enjoyed A New Hope, it felt like that kind of story, and right on the cover of it, I mean, you get the point, because Luke's in his X-Wing outfit and everything. And that was just an awesome, awesome time. Though it's terrible that I can't remember the full name. It had a very weird title, but it was The Adventures of Luke Skywalker in something. Huh. So anyway, but there's my picks. But yeah, Shadows of the Empire is, another one of those obvious picks. And it was really, as I've said many times on past Star Wars updates, it's the one book that I wish they would have said, okay, yeah, that's still canon, don't worry, because.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that like, there's always hope that they're going to bring, if not the stories themselves, elements of those stories back. I mean,
sure.
We know Filoni loves all the kind of stuff that we love. And I mean, he's always been the biggest proponent of the EU within Lucasfilm, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And certainly, praise to him for bringing back Thrawn. I mean,
right.
For him. So anyway, there's my EU picks. And shit. You know what else is actually too quick more? The Kenobi book was really great.
Yeah, that was like one.
Yeah, that was like right before Disney bought it. That and Darth Plagueis, both of those.
I was going to say that too. Really Darth Plagueis I did read, and that was a great one. Yeah,
those are both awesome.
That's definitely one of those ones too. Where I was like, if they were going to keep something from the EU, that would have been easily made it in. Because I mean, it's as far as I'm concerned, the story is still consistent with everything that's going on with Disney.
Yeah, so far I think so. I can't really think of much.
I can't think of anything that's contradicted it.
No, right.
It's more closely tied to the Clone Wars and the prequels than anything else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't mind it if that actually happened. There's a lot of other interesting stuff in the Darth Plagueis book that would have been fun to. Well, that could be played off of now. Of course, like you said, they still could end up doing that. But James Luceno, I mean, he's still writing for Star Wars with Disney.
Yeah, Tarkin was great.
Yeah, Tarkin was an awesome novel, way up there in my list. So anyway, yeah, so there's some old EU picks if people really want to, if they have some spare time with Star Wars, which I don't know how you do, but I consume everything and I just don't have the fucking, I
it is hard to keep up. I mean, and Brian reads more of it than I do, and I just kudos to you, man.
Someone's got to do it, damn it.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly. Sometimes you take a bullet for the team.
Yeah, I've taken a few too many with Disney at the helm. It's pretty ugly. It's even with the few books, at least sometimes, Dash Rendar's back, great. They did that Coruscant Nights book and everything. But but no, you get no real surprises, not with these lately. So anyway, yeah, I think that could wrap it up for our Star Wars update for June 2018. I think, well, at the beginning of the show, we talked about how we're feeling about Star Wars in general. Usually I like to end the show with that, but I think it was apropos to do it at the beginning this time around. So we'll definitely be talking about in July. We'll be talking about the Thrawn. I keep forgetting. Is it alliances?
Yeah.
Alliances. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say, but yeah, Thrawn alliances. That's going to be a huge part of our July review, I think. And because, that's just, no doubt about it, that's probably the most exciting thing to come out for Star Wars in 2018.
Yeah,
and they know
absolutely.
Yeah, they know this is a huge deal. So, and maybe we'll finally get into the comics. And I don't know, you don't expect there to be news, but then somehow there's other news that'll pop up. So
right, yeah, there's something always going on, whether it's contrived or real.
Well, if we just get to call bullshit on stuff, I'm all for that.
Yeah, so, yeah. Somebody's got to debunk this shit.
Damn right, because Collider sure as fuck isn't.
No, they're part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Robin, thank you so much, man. As we always say, but I mean it. This is definitely
one
of the highlights of my month.
Me too. Thank you for having me on. I can't thank you enough for bringing me along for the ride.
Yeah, man, and we got fun. Things are busy right now, but we've got some fun stuff planned for the future of the Star Wars update that we will get into. And a lot of that's on my end just because my schedule is so nuts, even though I keep thinking it's oh no, yeah, next month's going to be great. And then
you never have to fear for lack of content for the Star Wars update. Even if there was absolutely zero Star Wars news in a month, which seems unlikely at this point, we would still have plenty of things to talk. We already have an overabundance of things to talk about.
Yeah. I will say quick, my best friend, when I was a teenager, we just spent all night talking about just theorizing, just talking about Star Wars. You could do that. You could have sleepless nights just talking about Star Wars. You could have them forever. He and we did that shit for 15 years.
Yeah. I used to do that with my friend too.
Right on.
We'd have sleepovers and we'd play with Star Wars figures during the day and then talk Star Wars theory at night and
Star Wars
in the morning and do it all over again.
Oh, it's the best time. So yes, there's always stuff to talk about. Star Wars updates not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So all right, again, Robin, thank you, and everyone else. Well, this will be one of the last episodes for June on Patreon. Usually is so, but you never know what's going to pop up on Patreon at any given day. So I will see all of you on the other side.